We're moving on to guest number 2 here on Legal Marketing Day. Now, if you came to camp, right, your mom dropped you off, your dad dropped you off, whoever, grandma, grandpa, my grandparents used to drop me off at camp because I don't know why. And you're looking for SEO guidance, this next segment is one you'll definitely appreciate. Few people, if any, know more about law firm SEO than the man who is proverbially sitting next to me right now. He's the CEO of Hennessey Digital, an author, an internationally recognized SEO expert. Jason Hennessey is here with me now. Welcome to Reboot Camp, Jason. I feel like we're at like a talent show, like the movie style summer camp.
Exactly. Well, like I said, I'm honored to be here and excited to talk about something that I'm passionate about, and that's SEO specifically for law firms. So let's do it.
Excited to have you. We mentioned this quickly, but you were on the podcast not too long ago, and you were talking about your new book, which is Law Firm SEO, Exposing the Google Algorithm to Help You Get More Cases. And you said that one of the goals of your book was to teach lawyers how to hold SEO agencies accountable, when working with them. So can you speak to that a little bit more and share why you feel it's important for lawyers to carry at least some basic SEO knowledge?
Sure. Yeah. And that's is genuinely why I spent, 18 months of my life, writing that book. Is because, just being in this industry for so long, often we hear those horror stories where, we speak with a lawyer or a firm owner or a marketing director, and they're like, yeah, I'm really skeptical about this. I've already tried this 4 times. It didn't work. You come highly recommended, but I'm still skeptical. And so, regardless of even if they are a prospect that can afford us, there's also firms out there that don't have big marketing budgets, right? It's like, I could take some of the money that I would use to, pay my mortgage, to try to grow my firm, to kind of grow my quality lifestyle. And so that's even worse, is when, people are kind of like maybe getting misled. And so anyway, I took the time just to kind of document what it is that we do, where after you read the book, you don't even necessarily need to hire us. You can go and either do it yourself, right? Because you could either trade, time or money, right? That's kind of how you, how you do things, right? And so if you have a big firm, you're probably going to trade money to kind of do the marketing because you don't have the time for it. And if you don't have the money right now, you got to trade the time. And so this book basically is, provides all of the information and insights where you could, do this yourself or hire and hold a marketing agency accountable to getting the results that you're paying them for.
I love it. I do agree. And when I was first learning SEO, I had a mentor who told me that it was the job of an SEO to get everybody. If you're the person in charge of SEO in your organization, it's your job to get everybody on the same page, because SEO is an organization-wide job. Like, you all have to be moving in the same direction in order to affect the rankings of your website. Like, if you have a customer support team and they're calling something in the wrong name, and your customers start searching for it in a different way, and you're spending time trying to brand this term, right? Like, you can really mess yourself up in that regard. So everybody has to be a little bit more aware of how they affect things. So
100%, a classic example of that is like local service ads, right? It's not necessarily SEO, it's more like pay to play. But what people don't realize is that Google is measuring the time that, it takes for people to call you, and by the time you actually pick up the phone, right? This, right? And so if you have your phone ringing 6 times and it goes to voicemail, right, and you're paying for these LSA ads, like, you're not going to continue to show up there because it's not providing good value to Google's customer that's looking for a lawyer, right? So yeah.
And what a great way for Google to ensure real quality businesses are getting recommended to customers, because that's really all they care about, is improving the algorithm for searchers, right? So if they can guarantee that the people you're about to call are going to answer the phone, well, then you've just had a better experience with Google's product, which is ultimately search.
100%. Yeah.
So it wasn't that long ago, you were on the podcast. We asked you about the recent SEO trends that law firms should be keeping an eye on. But it kind of gets outdated quickly in our world, because
Mhm.
SEO is just constantly evolving. So again, I want to ask you what the recent developments and trends in the SEO world are. But
Mhm.
most, like, what should law firms be paying most attention to right now as it pertains to SEO?
Yeah. I think when you start to kind of go down the rabbit hole of trying to follow like the most recent trends, that's kind of a dangerous rabbit hole to kind of go down. I remember when I first got into SEO, it was like, oh, this is a link wheel strategy, and this is a three-party strategy where you link to me and I link to you, but we don't link to each other, right? And there's all these different like tactics and strategies, or spamming forums and embedding links using keyword anchor text, right? And so you continue to do this, right? But the more that you're trying to kind of go down that rabbit hole, the more damage that you're probably going to end up doing to your firm and to your website, right? So I would say you want to avoid a lot of the trends of what's working now, and just focus on more of the foundational stuff that will work forever. And so the foundational stuff that works forever, is good quality content. And what is good quality content? Well, when you do a search for a term that's important to your business, right? See who's ranking on the first page in the first result, right? And go study that page and see what are they doing. Like, there's probably a chance that they've got a video that explains whatever it is that somebody's searching for that satisfies the intent of that search, right? And then look at your page that is competing for that term. Does it do the same thing? And if the answer is no, then you might have to go in and start to improve the quality of your content to satisfy the intent of the search, right? Other things that you can do is just do what real businesses do, right? What could you do to make clients happy, where they leave positive reviews about you? What could you do to get press, other websites to mention you and to link back to you? How can you be seen as a subject matter expert, where you can start to write on sites that are very valuable, where you are a subject matter expert on the area of law? How can you go out and speak at some of the conferences to educate, right? Because you're building relationships. People might blog about it. They might link back to you. So just doing stuff that real businesses do. And then the other thing I would say is just to do a search for some of the big brands. Like, go look at Coca-Cola, go look at Nike, just search for their brand and look at the first 10 results on Google and see, what do they have listed? What's ranking for their brand name, right? You might see that they've got a LinkedIn page, they've got an Instagram page, they've got a Glassdoor page set up, right? Go out and start to build the same type of sites and profiles that all these big brands have.
Uh, there was something really funny that I saw. I don't know how long ago. This might be like 6 years ago now, but there was a competition between two SEO experts to rank for, I think it was SEO, like just
Okay.
straight up the keyword SEO on Google.
Mhm.
And one of the guys owned it was a keyword tool called Keyword Shitter. I don't know why
Okay.
he named it that. I feel comfortable saying that because that was
Okay.
his name for the product. And they had a competition, and this guy was like really old school. He's like, these new school SEOs, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm gonna rank number one before this guy ranks number one. His friend was really new school, and he got to
Mhm.
the number one result immediately.
Mhm.
And I don't even remember how I found this. I think I was just bored and Googled SEO, and I was like, I'm going to read this article that says, I bet my friend I could rank number one for this keyword. And I clicked
Okay.
on it, and he explained, he really didn't talk that much about how to do SEO in the beginning. He explained, if you're reading this, I've won this bet. This guy owes me like a steak dinner or something like that. And here's how I ranked for the number one rank on this page that we had the bet for.
Okay.
I read every single word of the top 10 results on the page, and I noticed that all of them had data laid out in infographics and then they had like this tutorial of how to do it in a step-by-step thing. So I'm going to do exactly that, and I'm going to provide more value than these other pages. And I guarantee that by the time you're reading this, like I've already eaten my steak dinner and I won this bet from this guy.
Okay.
I haven't checked up on that in a long time because you just reminded me that that existed when you were talking about reading the top results for the page that you want to rank on the keyword for. So I've seen that happen, and I commend that guy. I think his name was Nick something. I don't remember his name. I thought maybe you would know this because last time I had an obscure SEO reference, you knew the guy.
I did, yeah.
The crazy Scottish guy who, oh my God, that was insane. But
yeah.
So I want to mention, because in a recent blog post, you said that you laid out some of the essential building blocks that are needed to sort of form a complete SEO strategy. And I wanted to ask you about a few of those today, because I think that a great building block to start with is technical SEO. So can you give us a brief explanation of what technical SEO entails and why it's important not to cut corners with some of the technical components? And obviously that could cost your law firm later on.
Absolutely. So technical SEO, right? When you think of technical SEO, most people think of like all of the simple things like, oh, broken links, pages that end up in, a 404 page, page speed, like what can you do to kind of increase the page speed of a website? Are there too many scripts that are running on the website? Like, do you have a chat? Do you have Google Analytics? Do you have call tracking metrics? Do you have Facebook pixels, right? As you start to add more of these plugins and scripts, right, that kind of slows the site down as well, right? So that's kind of like more of the I would call it like the SEO 101 type of technical SEO. But then this goes way deeper, where, as you write content, you can add something called schema markup to tell Google, what this page is about. You can mark up things like reviews. You can mark up things like if you've got a recipe website, you can mark it up so that this is the recipe. You can mark up FAQs as schema. And then it even goes even like further than that, where now you start to look at like all of the internal links on a page, right? And this is where I think most, I want to say law firms, but just people in general make the biggest mistake is, you just have somebody writing content on a website and they're blogging maybe like twice a week. And then they're just randomly kind of like picking keywords to link to just random pages, right? So they might say, hey, if you are looking for a car accident lawyer, and then they take that and they link to like an FAQ page about a car accident lawyer. And in the next post, they say, hey, if you're looking for a car accident lawyer, and they link to like a car accident lawyer page that's trying to be more of a transactional page, like Atlanta car accident lawyer. What happens is, as you're starting to just randomly link to pages using anchor text like that, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because like you're confusing Google. You're saying, hey, I nominate this page for car accident lawyer, but I also nominate this page for car accident lawyer. And then, right. And so what happens is when we come in and we see that kind of stuff, like we have to kind of like almost deconstruct the website to kind of reconstruct it again. And a lot of it is just really, it's a very tedious process of going through and looking at all the internal links. We had one client that we brought on, and for 2 years, like the site was kind of declining. And so we came in and I was on calls every morning because I took this project very seriously as a big name. And so we started to go in and we fixed like, probably, I don't know, maybe 500, 600 hours, like just kind of fixing technical SEO issues. But the problem is when you're doing that, like, for example, the URL structure of the website was so bad that we had to kind of like change URLs, and we had to kind of get those pages out of the Google index to then kind of re-index them again. And so when you do that, like the traffic has been going down, but it's going to drop even further because all of those pages and all those traffic are coming out of the index, and then Google has to re-index them again. And then it literally took us 4 months, right? And there was no signs of life at all for this website. And then literally there was a Google core update that took place, and the site literally skyrocketed, right? Skyrocketed. It's like crazy because you took the time to go in and fix the site, all of the problems. Yeah. So anyway, that's just an example.
Uh, I always used to read case studies like that, because I had this section of my website that somebody told me, I think I told you about this the last time we spoke. Somebody told me that it would be really beneficial to my SEO if I built a glossary on my website and just defined a bunch of terms. And then I would rank for the terms, and it did work at the time. But later on, they became really detrimental to not only the overall SEO of my site or like the rankings of my site, but it was also cannibalizing other pages that I had built out to rank for those terms because those pages were there for longer. And it was really bad. So
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of glossaries, to be honest with you. Like,
really,
I think that's a good strategy if you execute it correctly, because typically when when you're using big terms that are like legal terms, right? People don't know what that means, right? And so you can do two things. You could either link out to like a Wikipedia article, right, so that people can read about that, or you can define what that means on your website. And so by you kind of just linking out to the definitions as you're writing your content, it's just making your website more of a subject matter expert on all things. But again, it has to be done in the right way.
mine was extremely gimmicky. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to get one up on the Google algorithm and just quick link. When in
Mm-hmm.
actuality, what I could have been doing, like I tried to define like legal intake, right? Nobody needs a
Mm-hmm.
definition for legal intake. And in fact, if I build out a page that entirely explains, right, what legal intake is and maybe like how you can do it better and processes and all of that stuff, it would be better. But I did what you're talking about. I took down all those pages, but I had to correctly 301 them and get them out of the index and then re-index other pages. And I had the same
Mm-hmm.
similar result. Like it didn't seem like it worked. And I had to wait a really long time. But that's the sort of long-term mindset that you need to adopt when you're doing this sort of technical SEO, because the results are not instantaneous. And I feel like a lot of people will get caught up in, well, it's a snake oil salesman. They got me. I got sold on this. And it didn't. You do have to wait for the results a little bit. And it usually.
Yeah, you do. You have to wait for the results. And here's the kicker. So, that example that I gave, right? So, we worked on this website, and literally, like, I think we got the website in like December, and come like May. So, like 4 or 5 months, right, of us kind of working on the website every day, all hands on deck. The site was just continuing to go down, down, down. And I'm like, and the client said, hey, listen, I'll give you a year to try to fix this. And we're like, okay. And so we deconstructed the whole website. And then, and he's like, hey, can you show me some signs of life? Right. You know what I mean? It looks really bad. Right. And so, to be honest with you, the client ended up leaving us. Right. So after we put in so many hours, right, trying to fix the website, the client left us and like, I'm too scared. Right. And so he ended up going back to the old agency that was managing the website. We had a good relationship for 2 years. And so then, basically, after the core update took place, literally like maybe like a month ago, the site just completely skyrocketed. Right. So it all comes down to, managing expectations of clients. Because I think if I would have done a good job of telling the client, hey, listen, if you just want us to patch the website, we can actually get the website to perform better. But if you're really looking for like a long-term strategy, we have to like deconstruct the whole website to reconstruct it again, right? And so that's kind of like the issue is just managing expectations as well.
I I know that, and it's hard. Like it's hard for us to just say it, and that's why I love to read case studies, and that's why I've done a bunch of research in order to make sure that that was like the correct strategy, and that's why I feel that your book is so important, because it teaches lawyers at least the basic knowledge for them to have a conversation about something that's so vital to the success of their organization, their firm, which is their website and the performance of it on search. But for anyone tuning in a little late, welcome to our law firm summer reboot camp. My name is Nick Werker. Today we're focused on legal marketing, And here with me is Jason Hennessey, the CEO of Hennessey Digital. And I want to move on. I want to talk about content because content's not really even like an essential building block. Content is really like it's the actual substance that the audience can consume from your website. So what are some of the important things that law firms need to keep in mind when they develop content plans that can have lasting impacts on their SEO?
So you nailed it, right? So it's not just you need to write content. You actually have to have a strategy, because if you just start writing and publishing content, like sure, you might accidentally rank for a term, right? But chances are, it's not going to stay there. It's not going to perform well. You really need a strategy, right? You need to kind of lay out like, I'm gonna, in 2022, I'm going to publish 400 pages of content on my website, right? In January, we're going to do these 50 pages. In February, we're going to do these 50 pages. All of these pages are going to be transactional pages, right? So this is going to be your Chicago car accident lawyer, your Chicago personal injury lawyer, Chicago dog bite lawyer, right? So those are all the transactional pages. But not only that, you have to kind of lay out like, how do these pages, like, how are they going to kind of like the navigation to get to these pages, right? What is the breadcrumbs going to look like where you kind of go back? Are you going to have all the practice areas like in the body copy, right? So that they can internally link to the pages together? Are you going to use a right sidebar navigation to link to the practice areas, right? So there's a whole strategy that kind of goes into that. And then, then it's like, okay, now I also need informational content as well, right? So like you might develop FAQs that talk about car accidents, and those FAQs are going to link back to the car accident page. That's your transactional page, right? So there's a lot that goes into this is really like 70% of SEO is just getting this part right. And if you don't get this part right, if you just say, hey, I've got a website, I've got an agency, they publish 10 pages a month, and my results aren't really all that great. Well, what's the strategy? Like, what are they writing about? Like, would you hire yourself if you read your own content, right? You know what I mean? So just some of the basic stuff that you just have to go back in and just investigate.
I love how you laid out the strategy because one of the first things I learned is listen, I am a broken record. I say the same things over and over again, and they're not original. They were taught to me because I had some pretty good mentors, but it's about getting the right message to the right person at the right time, right? So with content marketing, you have the unique ability to focus on one thing at a time. So if you put out content that is like your early stage, people are just looking for a solution to a problem that they may have encountered, right? So say you're a divorce attorney and somebody's obviously having a little trouble in their marriage and they're starting to look for, can I get divorced? Or how much would it cost to get a divorce in Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Early stage, and you write a whole article that's about how much it costs on average for a person to get divorced if they have X amount of kids or whatever, right? That's your early stage content. And then maybe you write at the end of that article, here's the link on my next page to book a free consultation about what the process is like to, hire an attorney, go to court and divide up assets and all this stuff, right? I'm not an attorney, I don't know, but I can use my imagination because what you do with content is you strategize, you move people down sort of the journey by letting them know
the funnel.
Sure.
Yep.
And that's what your strategy can be, is how do I nurture this sort of educational process for a person who might be interested in what I've got to offer. And
100%.
And what's cool about writing a transactional page like you're talking about is some people are ready, right? And they're looking for transactional pages. So they don't need to go through this whole thing. And that can be part of your strategy too, is finding people who are I don't know, maybe they've experienced divorce before and they're on their third or fourth divorce and they're like, nope, I know this is what I need. I'm ready to do it.
And it's important, like, as don't get me wrong, like SEO is just one piece of the puzzle, right? You should be building a brand in your market, right? Like some of the big TV advertisers and billboard advertisers, right? They've got a competitive advantage in SEO. And it's not because, like, they've got a better SEO strategy. Because when people get to the first page of Google, Google's looking at user signals, right? What's a user signal? User signal is when somebody does a search, they click on a result, right? Because they recognize the name. It's like, oh, I don't know all of these other firms, but this firm, like, I see this guy on TV all the time, right? And so because they recognize the name, they might click on that. And when they click on that result, which is in position number 4, right? If enough people do that, it's sending signals to Google that, hey, this probably shouldn't be ranking in position number 4. It should probably be ranking higher because more people are clicking on this. And if more people are clicking on this, then it's satisfying the intent of the search, right? Algorithmically speaking, this is how Google is looking at this, right? And then the next phase of that is after they click on it, now what does the user experience? Are they staying on that page, right? Are they staying on the page? Are they watching a video? Are they clicking through to other pages? Google's measuring the time frame that people are actually on the website before they go back to Google and click on another result, right? So those are really, when you get to the first page of Google, it's more about the user signals that Google's looking at.
That's extremely well said. And it's easy to lose sight of sort of optimizing a page for user signals when you're just trying to get to the first page in the first place, right? Once you get there, it's much more nuanced, and that's why I think it's important to have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of who has experience with SEO, who knows that, like, oh, when you're on this this is when you're ready to launch this sort of advertising campaign, not really before. Because if you do it before, you're kind of going to throw a lot of money into the wind. I want to talk about local SEO with you while we have an opportunity, because law firms are really hyper localized for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of firms that have a nationwide presence, but really the law is very like jurisdictional, right? It's in your local area. So it's really important for law offices, especially, to focus on their local SEO presence. So can you sort of explain what local SEO entails, and what law firms can do to capitalize on their local market?
Yeah. So, obviously local SEO is trying to get within those, the 3 map pack listings when you do a search query, right? Whether you're doing a search for pizza or personal injury lawyer, right? In most cases, if there's a map pack, then that's a local search, right? At least Google deems it as a local search. 5 years ago, it was a lot easier for you to rank by leveraging kind of like techniques and strategies and the authority of your website. And you could basically rank in a city like Atlanta by having an office like, maybe like 10 miles outside of Atlanta, right? And so recently there was a Google algorithm update where they're like, no, we're going to kind of, bring in the reins a little bit. And so, we want to make sure that everybody has a chance and that we're serving up a more local kind of search presence for those that are in those areas, right? So what could you do to proactively kind of have a good local strategy? Sure, like I can give you all the obvious answers that you should, make sure that you complete your Google My Business profile. You answer all of the, the FAQs. You leverage the Google post feature there. You make sure that you select the right category. You make sure that you get, good reviews. You make sure that you respond to Google reviews, right? But even if you do all of that right, you're still going to only serve, a radius, right, from where the office is located. So what I recommend is if you're really trying to kind of get more local search, consider, opening up different offices throughout, the areas that, where there's, opportunity, right? And you just can't open up like a virtual office. You actually have to have somebody that's actually physically there. You have to have your name on the door. If you have signage, that's even better. You should have a Google certified photographer come in and shoot the panoramic 360 photo, which basically takes the street view inside your office, which is one of the best citations that you can get. So some of these big billboard lawyers that have, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars per month on billboards. Sure, that's a great effective strategy, but you might want to take some of that budget and start to put offices in areas where there's, high population, right? Because, that's something that you can actually measure, right? You put an office there, you can set up some kind of a call tracking system, and you can actually see how many phone calls and how many cases you're getting from that office, right? So but anyway, that kind of local is we could probably do a 3-day boot camp just on local. So there's so much to talk about there.
So Anthony wrote in that if I had the money to open another office, I wouldn't be here. But I think I want to sort of respond to that by saying it doesn't have to be like, I don't know, the leather and mahogany bookshelf type of law office. Like you can open a small office and start to meet clients in other areas. And what that does is it allows you to serve more customers, right? If you have more opportunities to serve more customers, especially if you're doing this local SEO type of thing, more customers is more money, right? And it's funny, the answer of like, if I have a pizzeria, but I want to serve a larger area, but my delivery people can only drive 5 miles, what do I do? Well, you open another pizzeria, right? With more ovens. And it is an initial investment, but obviously the payoff is there if you're doing the stuff we talked about. So I'll read this question. I want you to answer this. You mentioned holding SEO agencies accountable for their work. What would be the top 3 subjects of things to look out for?
Yeah. So I think, as far as like holding an SEO agency accountable, you should both have the same goals, right? Right from the start. Like, what are the goals, right? And the ultimate goal is really, increasing the number of leads that your firm gets, right? The real goal is increasing the number of signed cases that you get. But unfortunately, the SEO agency can't control if you're answering the phone or if you're getting back to the leads, right? So, that's really where your conversion is going to play into factor of turning the leads into signed cases, right? So anyway, that's like the ultimate goal, right? That's the end. The means to the end is everything else, right? And so everything else is, coming in and making sure that they fix all of your technical SEO and increasing the popularity of the website with links and, making sure that they're, properly kind of, setting up phone calls with you to kind of show you and to educate you on what they're doing and why they're doing it. And to be your eyes and ears for what's happening within the industry, both the legal industry, but also the search industry. Like, what are some of the new tools? What are some new features? Google now has a different analytics, like you have to kind of get that transitioned. So, being the eyes, but also educating you. So I say education and communication are super important. Transparency. And then from there, then you look at all of the different metrics that are going to kind of be the means to the end, right? Is your traffic growing? Are your rankings growing, right? Are the number of leads growing, right? And so those are the 3 things. But, as far as like tactical, what should they be doing? They should be doing technical SEO, fixing your website. You should be able, if you read my book, it's called Law Firm SEO. And I think it'll give you a lot of insights into what you should be looking for. There's like simple tools that you can just use to log in and check your page speed. You should be making sure that your core web vitals are passing both on desktop and mobile. You should be monitoring how many local phone calls that you're getting, right? So, those are all, again, the means to the end, but the end is making sure that your leads are growing. And unfortunately, if you're just getting started, hopefully that they've done a good job of managing your expectations, because if you're just getting started and you're in a competitive market and you've got maybe not a big budget, it could be 12 months before you see your first lead if you're just getting started in SEO. And hopefully they're doing a good job of managing your expectations.
I just want to add to that because you did such a good job, but I'm a big proof of concept type of person. I like to see proof that it's working. So I like an agency. For example, I work with an agency that manages a lot of the pay-per-click that I do, and they also manage their own tracking alongside of what I've already got set up, so that we both have clarity on how many leads they've gotten me versus my internal metrics, whether or not those leads are any good. And I provide like a continuous feedback loop with them where we have calls and we talk about, these are the type of leads that come in that really work for our business. And here's the type of lead that comes in that doesn't work for my business. And so we sort of turn those things off and we focus on other things. So like if local SEO is really working for you and you say the leads that come in from the local, they're great. They're my ideal clients. And then you obviously spend a lot more time focused on local SEO. So it's important to have this relationship with an agency that you can provide feedback to, that can also meet your expectations, but like Jason said, manage your expectations. I want to talk about because we cover a lot, and it's really overwhelming to talk about SEO, which it sort of feels like, oh man, like 12 months I got to invest in this thing, but it's a lot easier to imagine yourself getting started with it than it is to sort of be in the middle of the journey, right? So when it comes to getting started with executing an SEO game plan, what are the beginning steps, and at what point should law firms really be looking to consult with an expert?
Yeah. So when you're just getting started, I would probably advise you to make an investment to have somebody design a nice website for you, within your budget, right? Because you want to make sure when people get to the website that they get a good user experience. You probably want to spend time, writing some of your own content, right? Just create an FAQ page where you start to write, all of the different questions that people are searching for, based on, some of the data points that you hear on your call tracking, right? When you listen to the calls, what are some of the repetitive questions that people ask? And how could you answer those? And don't be afraid to answer a question that would appear to be like a national query where there's no way you'd ever rank for something like, how do I get a police report after an accident, right? Because what happens is people don't realize this, is that, if I do a search for how do I get a police report after an accident, Google's going to serve me in California, specifically in Los Angeles. Like, where do I go in Los Angeles to get a police report, right? If they do it, for you, you're going to get a different experience from a different state, right? And so take the time to actually like clearly write out content about like truly trying to help the user. And then from there, as you continue to do that, just making this investment, over time, you'll start to get some traffic. The traffic will turn into, some leads will turn into cases, right? And then hopefully that will give you the funding to maybe reinvest into more content. Maybe instead of you writing the content now you bring in a full-time writer to just write content doing that. And then you continue to do it again. And next thing you know, bam, now you're just not trading your time anymore, but you're investing your money so that you can be spending more time on the phone and in the courtroom and doing what you're more passionate about. So I would say that's some of the things that you should do. If you're just trying to keep the lights on immediately, obviously pay-per-click is probably the strategy to use for that. LSA ads, optimizing your Google My Business for your local area so that you're at least getting those calls within your area. So that's where I'd focus, but don't just ignore SEO, right? In 20 years from now, if you want shade because of a tree, you need to plant that tree, right? And so I would plant that tree with your SEO now.
So if our viewers today want to hear more from you and connect with you further, what's the best way to get in touch with you and your agency and get the book? I think the book is a great starting point for people to get familiar with you and obviously start their baseline understanding.
Yeah, thank you. So I would say, the book is probably one of the most important pieces. Like I literally took 20 years of legal marketing experience and I packed it into the book. And, some days it's $25 on Amazon. Other days I've seen it as low as like $4, right? So I don't know. I have no control over what they price the book. Um, but I think that that would be probably one of the best investments that you make this year by investing the $20 into buying the book and taking the time to read the book, because I think it will arm you with enough information to empower you to be successful from a digital marketing perspective in a legal space, right? And I think after you read the book, you'll understand why Google ranks pages for search queries. You'll understand like why they're doing it that way. That's my promise to you. If you want, an agency to do this for you, there's a lot of good agencies out there. We're one of them. Hennessey Digital. You can find us at hennessey.com, HENNESSEY.com. Or if you want to have a good time, you can leave off the E and get some contact there. And where can you find me? Facebook, Instagram, just at Jason Hennessey. And tune into my podcast as well, the Jason Hennessey podcast on Spotify and Amazon and Apple and all those places.
All of that stuff is going to be linked in follow-up emails after this whole reboot camp is over, and also in the description of this video if you're watching a recast. But Jason, I want to thank you so much for joining us today at the second day of our law firm summer reboot camp.